I say this? Gamedeck, a single-player, non-combat, cyberpunk, detective, isometric RPG, now has a Kickstarter campaign. When I saw this announcement on Twitter, I thought to myself, well, why does Disco Elysium 2.0 have a Kickstarter and it even has cyberpunk elements? I mean, that's a very fast development cycle, considering that the game just came out last October of 2019. Obviously though, they are not, as Gamedeck is being developed by another indie studio, namely Anshar Studios, which is based in Poland. We're going to talk about Gamedeck's premise, its in-game mechanics, and the free-to-play game it comes with. So without further ado, let's begin. In the 22nd century in Warsaw City, you are a Gamedeck, which is short for game detective who solves crimes both in the real and virtual worlds. Now, citizens live in cities which are heavily fortified to protect them from the natural world. This outside world is known to have mutated and is now hostile to human beings. Because of being trapped, some people choose to escape into virtualia, which are virtual games to forget the horrors in the real world. In terms of crimes, the people who hire you can either be as corrupt as the suspects themselves or completely innocent. Some are businessmen, while some are mothers who just want to give their children a better life. What's interesting is you're not certain if the people you're working with are actually good or if they have the motivations to harm others. Will you go the dark or the noble route? As with any RPG, your choices matter if you decide to comply with the instructions given to you or harm the people involved. Now, these choices affect not only the stories in the game, but also your character. The question then becomes, will you be able to live with your choices? As they say in the trailers,
"We don't judge. You are the sum of your choices."
Since deviating choices is the essence of Gamedeck, the game will have multiple endings where you can view connections between each case. Storytelling won't be linear. Gamedeck is set to be released on Steam in December 2020. It may or may not be delayed depending on development progress. Anshar Studios has the intention of releasing this game on GOG and on consoles in the future as well. The core of character creation starts after you choose your gender and avatar, as there will be questions depending on who you want to be. Now, this is not set in stone and will definitely change depending on the choices you make along the way. Now, aspects on the other hand are limited to a select few when you start the game. You acquire more aspect points as you gain experience, which are influenced by attributes, personality traits, skills, origin, and knowledge. When you have enough of these, you unlock professions. These are highly specialized skills that further define your character. So let's say you want to become a hacker because, let's face it, it's much easier in the virtual world. There's a path that you have to unlock to become better at your craft. So in the example given by Anshar Studios, we have technician, programmer, hacker, and V-runner. As you become more adept, you further unlock additional game paths. This doesn't, however, come without consequences, as being a hacker projects an image of distrust among NPCs. There's also the possibility of becoming an esports player where you are treated as a celebrity. Meanwhile, deduction and codex are both archives. The deduction system is a summary of all the clues you gathered for each case. This section helps you deduce information to form a conclusion. It's up to you to follow through or not, depending on what you value. Again, each choice has a consequence. So for example, you decide not to confront the perpetrator for his or her crime. This NPC's behavior towards you may change, and as a result, it will unlock game paths, while locking others had you delivered him or her to the authorities. Meanwhile, Codex is the section of how you handle each and every case so you don't miss out on any details. On March 25, the Gamedeck gameplay was released. Let's face it, the game is very pretty. The dark environment is very detailed without being too complex. It's able to capture the cyberpunk theme of high-rise buildings with huge neon signs and floating vehicles. The ones that we've seen in Blade Runner, Ghost in the Shell, and even Cyberpunk 2077. I especially enjoyed the part where the character is stuck in this virtual loop where he needed to activate the eyeball movement to trigger the Guardian Angel mode. So what happens is, you reconstruct the scene before you, indicated by the environment's change of colors into the standard rust and blue. This is so you can deduce and gather information on the objects around you. I do understand that it's currently in the pre-alpha build, but even then I have one concern. So this game heavily relies on dialogue because this is a non-combative RPG. There are no guns, no combat actions, and the varying choices that you make are the only ones that have impacts to the storylines. This was done with Disco Elysium being in the similar vein of a detective RPG with dialogue trees and skill checks. This turned out to be a huge success, and that game is considered as one of the best narrative RPGs out there. In relation to this, however, is how dialogue options are portrayed. Now, going back to this twisted and perverted gameplay, what we see with our character is a simplistic style of choice. So when we meet Umbra, for instance, we see that the choices are Investigation Fredo, Leave, or Ask about her, instead of detailed sentences of what we will actually say. It's only when you select a choice do you see the accurate and longer version of that response. I do wish, however, that the devs consider making these options more concise so that we can make better and more informed decisions when it comes to interacting with other characters.
Corporate needs you to find the differences between this picture and this picture. Intel has told us there are at least 7.
Okay, I already see one. Give them. Okay.
They're the same picture.
In this manner, the game will feel more personal and direct because we end up choosing what we intend to exactly say instead of observing what we just said. Gamedeck doesn't end here, as it even has its own game. Harvest Time is one of the virtual games that you can play for free on top of the main game. This involves tending to your harvest and earning money with the possibility of taking advantage of some of your workers if you choose to do so. Now, what's cool about this is in relation to Gamedeck's premise, Harvest Time brings people closer to nature, which in the real world is cause for much concern. This is the fantasy or idealized version of being able to touch plants and take care of multiple farms. Its tone and ambience are also lighter as compared to the dark and ominous environment of Warsaw City. Will you be a Kickstarter backer? What other features would you like to see as Gamedeck is being developed? Let me know in the comments section below. So that's it for today, guys. I'm Wisa. Thank you again for tuning in. Please remember to subscribe and hit the notifications bell for updates on the channel. I will see you again this week for more game news. I hope you have a great week and happy social distancing.